our third professional development series, and the series today is focusing on preparing for a citation. You'll see a lovely group of happy recipients of the 2023 citations who received a Citation Award in WA. Before I start, I'd like to give an acknowledgement of country. So on behalf of those present, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we now meet. I pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. I also pay my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia and hope the path towards reconciliation continues to be shared and embraced. So thank you for joining us. We've got a small team that manages the National Awards program. We're really pleased that Universities Australia have agreed to run this awards program again. As I said, I've got a small team that's helping us with the management of the awards. So Miss Luana Spadafora, who is here online, you can see if you'd like to give a bit of a wave there, Luana. She's our awards manager. And I've also got Danielle Patterson, who's also our awards coordinator. Both of these lovely ladies have been working frantically to make sure all the guidelines are available. Everything's updated on the university's website and also on our AAUT network website as well. And in addition to that, preparing for these PD sessions. So it gives me a great pleasure that they are here and are able to support the awards. So the agenda for today is our focus is on writing a successful citation. And we've got the chair of the citations panel with us, and I'll introduce her in a moment. And we've also invited some successful applicants that were successful in receiving the 2023 awards. And then we'll open it up for Q&A, and then we'll just run through the key nomination dates. All right, so I'll introduce our presenters for today. So we've got the distinguished Alfred Deakin Professor, Liz Johnson. She's the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic at Deakin University. So there's Liz waving her hand. Lovely to see you, Liz. She's known for her strategic educational leadership, and she's been involved in the Australian Awards for University Teaching for many years now. And she's generously been giving up her time to chair the citations panel, and she's done that, I think, for the past 3 years. And she's here today to actually give you some insights into what's required to write a successful application and what the chair of the committee and the panels, the assessment panels, look for. We've also got another 3 members presenting today. 2 have joined us online. So that is Associate Professor Danica Hickey from Queensland University of Technology. She received a 2023 Citation Award, and her title of her citation was for improved data analytics and professional transferable skills for biomedical student graduates through authentic assessment enhanced by emotive feed-forward practice. So we're really pleased to have Danica here today. She'll be giving us a bit of an overview of, what her experience in crafting an award and sort of some tips that she can share for potential new applicants that are interested in applying. And in addition to Danica, we've also got Professor Steve Kenway from the University of Queensland. And he's the team lead of the Urban Design Challenge team, and they were also awarded a 2023 citation. And his citation was or the team citation was for engaging multidisciplinary student teams in creatively solving complex, real-world, sustainable urban design problems through gamified, scenario-driven learning experiences and rich dialogic feedback. That's a bit of a mouthful, that title, but nice to be nice and comprehensive. And then finally, we have a third presenter, but unfortunately is unable to join us because she had some international travel delays. and she's currently in transit. So she has provided us with a recording of her presentation, which we'll also present. That's only a 4 or 5 minute presentation that we'll share with you towards the end of the presenters. And that is Miss Charanya Ramakrishnan, and she received a 2023 Citation Award in the Approaches to Learning category for inspiring excellence in student learning through exploring and implementing unconventional active learning approaches in IT. So I'd like to welcome our presenters. It's great to have them here. And we're going to start off with Liz, who's going to give us a bit of an overview of what's required to submit a citation. So over to you, Liz.
Thank you, Ange, and it's a great pleasure to be back with you all today. This is my tribe, as I say to other people, and it's very exciting to be with elite and leading teachers who are so committed to student learning. We'll have a look at 3-4 things today. So why we would commit to building an AAUT citation, some first steps to think about while you're getting ready, a little bit about how the application works, categories and criteria to look for, and then I really want to focus in on narrative and evidence. Why nominate? Well, the joy of my involvement in this is that education is inspiring and higher education is transformative. And every year when I get to see these citations, I am really blown away by the wonderful work that people do. The thing about the citations program is it's a very broad church. It invites contributions from teams, from individuals, from a very broad range and across a very broad set of criteria, which we'll come back to in a minute. We're really looking for the things which make student learning work best. And it's really important because as we celebrate those, what we are doing is building a picture of excellence and building understanding of excellent practice. So excellence builds better student outcomes. It's more satisfying to students. It's also more satisfying to teachers. You can be really proud of the work that you've done when you see it has impact. Understanding how that happens really builds capability, and recognising that builds confidence both in our staff, but also your peers in your disciplines and in your institutions. And amazingly, it also builds confidence in the students. As you're more confident, the students are more confident. As you're more able and capable and feel like you can innovate, the students benefit. Bringing you together across a network like the Australian Awards for University Teaching allows you to connect up with other people. And most importantly, in that recognition bit, it gives you national recognition. This really does make a difference. And I'm sure our colleagues who are speaking later will talk a little bit about it. It's both a recognition for you to describe and define your contribution, but it's also a recognition for others that says this person has really reached the top level of excellence for learning and teaching in universities in Australia and has been recognised in a national award system. On the next slide, we'll get into why do we say outstanding? And as Ange said at the beginning, the citations are for outstanding contributions to student learning. And this is because we're looking for leaders, for champions, for those examples of excellence. So outstanding, we ask it to be significant, that it's got a tangible impact on student learning. Now, sometimes that's in a classroom, but often it's not. It's about all the things that pack around student learning and make students able to learn successfully. We ask that an outstanding contribution is leading, that it goes beyond normal design, delivery or support. Of course, we value normal design, delivery and support. That's the bread and butter of what we're doing. But in a recognition scheme like this, we're looking for a leading contribution, something that will grow, develop, change practice. Of course, it needs to be evidence-based. Our practice should always be evidence-based, and we ask that our applicants for these awards present the evidence which is convincing to allow us to assess their work as outstanding. But we're not just asking for raw data, we're asking for a narrative. What's the story which explains how you developed your outstanding contribution? And that should be both purposeful and reflective. You can find out lots more information, and on the next slide we've got links out, and these slides will be made available to you. I suspect that most people in the room have already jumped onto the website at some point, or contacted through their institutional contact officer, or had a look at the network site. Whatever it may be, there is a wealth of resources sitting there for you, and I encourage you to take really the time to have a look at it. It will save you a lot of time in the end if you go and use those resources and shape your narrative, start thinking about your award nice and early. So let's dive into, how does the nomination work? Well, I said these nominations are a broad church, and they are. So we're going to start with a few basics about giving us an indication of where your award fits into the scheme. So first of all, we need to know a little bit about you. So category 1, where does your award fit? Tell us what your discipline group is, and tell us if you've got any additional characteristics which might make an award for you a little different from others. We call out people who are early career teachers or supporters of teaching. We call out Indigenous education contributions through the Neville Bonner Award for Indigenous Education, critically important. We call out sessional staff, and it's been a great joy to see applications coming through from sessional staff who often feel like they're sitting alongside watching. People do amazing contributions as sessional staff, and it's really heartening to see those coming through. Everyone else, that's again a broad church. Then we need you to tell us something about what you did. So subcategory of award, it's just a label. What we're trying to get you to do is to hone the narrative for your award and give us some view on where your contribution is and what criteria we should apply to it. The criteria, there are general criteria that apply to all, but there's a flavour to each of these subcategories, and I really encourage you to look at them in depth and understand them a bit more. When we'll look at again in a minute at choosing the right subcategory. Then the assessment criteria themselves apply to all awards, no matter which category you're in or which subcategory you're in. And we're looking for positive impact over time, recognition, creativity, and scholarly practice supporting your work. And this reflects the intent of the awards, and it reflects those characteristics of outstanding that I showed you a little while ago. So let's dive in a bit. And the first place I'm going to start is selecting the right subcategory. And this can be tricky because teaching is actually done holistically. It can be hard to dissect out whether you want to talk about approaches to learning and teaching, or specific curriculum, or specific assessment practices, or leadership. So think about it carefully, assemble your evidence, and then test it with somebody else would be my advice. Show them the subcategory descriptors and get them to have a look at your evidence. Your institutional contact officer is often a really good person to do this with, and say, where do you think I can make the best case? What kind of evidence do I have, and what kind of contribution have I made? And test that out, because sometimes we get citation applications coming in and we think, well, it really would have been a lot clearer for us if it had sat in a different category. So please take the time to test that with a colleague and with friends. If we look into the subcategories a little more, you can see how we make these decisions about choosing a subcategory. So when you're talking about approaches, we're really talking about how you address teaching. What is it that you bring to? And this is applications in this space often talk about teaching philosophy. They talk about integration. How did you put all the pieces together to create a teaching or student support or student experience program or activity that really hangs together well and tells a narrative about the approach to teaching? You might be focusing in on enabling success. You might be focusing in on particular student cohorts. You might be focusing in on a pedagogy transition or something like that, where you've got a holistic view of how that's going to be carried out. The second subcategory around curriculum resources or services really hones in on specific tools or resources or activities around learning and teaching. So you might look at things like specific resources. They might be information resources, or they might be tools to help people learn, or they might be tools of a particular discipline. They might be new applications of resources. And with the advent of generative artificial intelligence, I'm sure we're going to get a lot in that category too. So think broadly about what resources means to you. Think about connections. So authentic tasks often connect learners with either the world of work or the discipline study or life. And those are ways of framing your story about curriculum, resources or services. And of course, that linkage out to practice, life and community also features in this space. Our next two categories, subcategories, also hone in on specific aspects of learning and teaching. So category 3 is about effective assessment practices. Now, when you're doing this, think about assessment holistically. Don't just think about the assessment instrument. Think about all the things that you pack around it. Think about feedback. Think about academic integrity. Think about what thinking skills like evaluative judgment you are building in your students. And then there's the leadership category, leadership or innovation. And this is really about your influence on your peers. How have you moved either your peers immediately proximal to you, further in the institution, between institutions, across a discipline, wherever it might be? Think about your sphere of influence and think about different kinds of leadership which you've brought to bear to make a real change for students. Okay, big decisions there. And as I say, the big thing to do is to collect your evidence, try playing with a few statements and get somebody else to talk you through it. While you're looking at the evidence, think about all the assessment criteria. So on the next slide, we've got this nice 4-square looking at impact, recognition, creativity, and scholarship. And we want you to be addressing all the criteria. Don't choose one and omit the others. Of course, your evidence is likely to be stronger in one direction or another, but you will have evidence in all of those 4 squares. So it's important that you draw on it. The applications are not long, so you're going to spend a bit of time crafting this so that you can pack all that information in, but make sure that you have covered all those four aspects of the criteria. For impact, we're looking for impact on student learning, student engagement, or student experience for a period of no less than 3 years. And it's important to note this. Sometimes we get into discussions about, well, when did that activity really start? Please tell us. Please describe it. If it took you a long lead time before it actually got into the classroom, then explain why we should consider all that lead time up front. And we need evidence of impact. What actually changed? And this is where the evidence base becomes really important. I'll come back to that a little bit later on. Tell us about recognition. If you've already got recognition, and often this comes from disciplinary areas, or you might have been asked to go and do some work on your particular area at a peer institution or in another faculty in your own institution, tell us about that, because this is a moment of another piece of evidence, which is they're saying, yes, there's esteem. Peers have esteem for this work. When you're talking about creativity, imagination, innovation, please tell us why it's creative in your context. Often something that's very creative in your world might have been done many years ago in a quite different discipline. So tell us why, what the evidence is that it's creative in your world. And sometimes creativity is a new twist on the old, and sometimes it's something brand new. That creativity takes many different forms, but please give us the context around it. Scholarship's probably the easiest one for you to include, because I'm pretty sure that almost all people on these kind of calls and considering these kind of awards are engaging strongly with evidence-based practice. Tell us where you're drawing evidence for. Convince us that you have good grasp of the scholarship. When we're looking at assessors' tips on writing a successful application, I chose these 3 because I think they're ones that the panel has talked about many times over the years I've been involved. Top left, please start early. Don't do this at the last minute. It's actually a considered and not demanding so much as it needs time for you to develop that narrative. So start early. Start early. And then in blue, seek mentoring. Make sure that you're talking to people about what you're writing and what it might turn into as you develop your application. Find somebody who's experienced. AAUT assessors are spread throughout all our institutions. There will be one or more at your institution who do it and do it regularly. And of course, there's mentors listed on the AAUT website. So please get in touch if you haven't got somebody locally who can help you out. As you're thinking about your work, I hope you are always considering how you're going to share your practice. What you're telling us is that it's outstanding, and we want that to be recognised and shared across the sector so we can all benefit from it. So look for opportunities to share your practice. Many of us have discipline conferences where there's an education section. You might go to a dedicated higher education conference. You might be able to put it into professional association news. You might be able to do it in your local teaching and learning networks, but make sure that you're talking to people about your work. Now, I'm going to move you into evidence. I know I'm rattling through this at a million miles an hour, but these notes and this, I think the recording I'm looking at, Danny, will be available. Yes, I've got a nod. So you can go over and reprise in your own time. And all of this information is well covered in the resources. When you're thinking about evidence, when I talk to people about evidence, I ask them to think about it across three big buckets. A lot of people are very quick to point to student surveys, and they are an important source of evidence. They are not the only source of evidence. What student surveys tell you is what people think. Now, if you're student surveys, it's what the students thought. If it's peer review of your work, it's what your peers thought. If it's external from industry, letters of commendation or appreciation, again, it's feedback from stakeholders, but they're all about what people think. The next bucket along is behaviours. What did people do? Now, this is really important to address because now we're getting down to outcomes. What people thought is kind of an outcome, but it's not really on its own right going to change student learning. It's what people do, and the bucket on the right, what happened. That is the real evidence of the impact on student learning of your work. So think about what evidence can you gather of what people did? Did you drive up participation levels? Did you shift engagement? Did you change the rate of turnaround? So was assessment submitted in a more timely manner? Did more external partners get involved? All those kinds of things are evidence of behaviours. And then you're talking about outcomes. And again, a lot of people jump straight to grades and marks, and that is a very valid form of outcome. But again, it's not the only form. If your contribution is actually around student experience, grades and marks are kind of secondary. What you're actually looking for is student achievements, students' capacity to do something different, skills that they can now demonstrate. You might be looking at something different. So my overarching goal here is to get you to think broadly about evidence, and remember that the people that are reading your application can only find the evidence if you put it in. So make sure that you do. All of those things should be leading into a statement around impact. What changed and did it last? This is why we ask you to have 3 years worth of experience to draw on, because we want to see the impact over time, and you do too. Did your intervention, did your activity have lasting outcome? And you can take all those three buckets, perceptions, behaviours and outcomes, and take them on chronological trends to see what's happening over time. And what you're hoping to see is a cumulative increase in impact. So critique your data, ask a friend, triangulate your data with complementary data or longitudinal data, use qualitative and quantitative data. It's always good to have multiple forms of evidence coming through. And please, please, please make sure you take the time to tell us about your context. What is innovative, new, impactful in one discipline is not necessarily the same in another. And we need to understand that, or for a different cohort of students or in a different institutional context. We need to understand that when we're assessing your application. I've got a couple of slides next up, which are probably too complex to go through now. And so I'm not going to, except to say I took a couple of examples from the website. You can go and find them. And I started pulling out what is it about this application which makes it particularly good around evidence. And without going through it in detail, you can start to see in quite short numbers of sentences or diagrams, people can establish a case around scholarship, data, triangulation, link to the research, explaining the context and the narrative. People do, and I encourage you to think about using diagrams, graphs, images, but if you do, please make sure they add to the narrative, they say something new, and that they are easily interpretable by somebody who's not in your area, right? So make sure that you explain them if you're going to put them in. The outcomes benchmarked at the bottom there, that's that context piece. Tell us why this is outstanding in your space. The next one, I've done the same sort of thing. Again, I've pulled out some pieces and saying, look, this is the kind of thing that tells us that we've got really good evidence around student feedback, or good evidence around recognition, or good evidence around impact. And you can do this discipline for yourself as you work through your application. Sit with somebody and explain where you put all the pieces that were of such good value and are coming forward to make your case. So finally, to put it all together, I'm really encouraging you to get yourselves organised. I know you're an organised crew. Most successful teachers tend to be pretty organised, and certainly people supporting teaching who juggle both teachers and students are also very organised too. So get yourself organised, give yourself plenty of preparation time, give yourself time to reflect and use other people to help you. Remember that the assessors only see your nomination. That's it. So make it easy for them. Use the template, address the criteria, make it clear for the people to walk through what you've written, create a story, because that helps to explain the evidence that you're putting forward, and don't forget to explain the context and significance. Now, I've gone a million miles an hour, Ange, and I know that that's a lot to take in, but I also really encourage you to spend time on the website. There are terrific resources there.
Thank you, Liz. That was really comprehensive. And, the reason why we're recording this session is that so people can go back and listen to the session in their own time. Look, before we move on to the next couple of presenters, I did just want to address some of the questions that came in through the chat. One of the question is around for impact 3 years. What if the academic is new to the institution but has extensive and long-term impact at their previous institution, which feeds their ongoing practice? Are academics with a less than 3-year track record at their current institution ineligible for applying? So my sense is if they're new and they've got less than 3 years, they probably haven't built up enough evidence to say that they've sustained something, and their practice is, high quality and sustained. But if they've gone from one institution and another institution and they've had impact and they're moving across, absolutely they can apply. So they don't have to be 3 years in just one institution. Liz, did you want to add anything further to that?
Totally agree, Ange. And the point is the citation is for you or your team. It's not for the institution. So it's about your practice.
What is considered early career? So that's defined in the guidelines. And I believe early career, we said less than 5 years is early career. Is that correct, Luana? Yep. Less than, oh, great. Luana's just put in the early career details in the chat. So nominees with no more than 5 years experience teaching in higher education institutions may apply for early career citations. So there's some more details in the chat. And does it include previous sessional work before obtaining a PhD? What did we say about sessional work? Luana, can you remember if we've got anything about sessional work?
I believe I was going to say, I believe if it's teaching in higher education, it can still be included. But I might need to get back to you because we have answered that question before via email, so I can just check what we've done there.
Yeah, fair enough. And there's someone that's got their hand up. Sorry, Liz, over to you. Yep.
I was just going to say again, Ange, it's about you. But remember, it has to be relevant to the citation that you're putting forward now. Often your work as a sessional academic might attest to your teaching capability, but it doesn't necessarily relate to the case that you want to put forward for citation. So think about it very carefully, and Luana will provide more more information. Thanks, Luana.
Right, and we've got Michael Baird has got his hand up. Michael?
Yep, thank you. I just want to clarify a little bit further on the 3 years. So I understand a citation is only meant to be a very small, well, I shouldn't say small, but it's very focused on one particular idea or one particular topic. And yes, I understand we need relevance of that across a sustained period of time. But then how much can we add in? Because usually one idea leads to many other ideas. So how focused do we want this 3 year one topic idea for a citation to be?
Michael, how long's a piece of string? So people do put in very developed, what I would say is longitudinal and large things in for a citation. They do that. And it all comes back to what's the narrative. The question really is at the other end, when is something too small? And I would encourage you to think about the level of impact. If it's one class run once or twice, then the impact is relatively small. If it's a large class over a long period of time, you're now talking hundreds to, probably thousands of students, then your impact is much bigger. But think how much more impactful that is when you have other people in your institution coming to observe, or other teams in your institution learning from the way that you're working with those students. So successful citation applications do show impact beyond a single activity, not because they're different, but because, as you say, the activity has grown. There is a point where it becomes very large, and at that point I would talk to your institutional contact officer about the awards, the individual and team awards for university teaching. Having said that, most people will go for a citation first to build their own experience with the awards program before they go for a full individual award, which has to cover all of the criteria rather than just choosing one category. Have I got that right, Ange?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yep. All right, just because of time, we'll keep moving on. So we'll now start to hear from some successful 2023 AAUT citation recipients. And we're going to start with Associate Professor Danica Hickey. Each presenter will have about 5 minutes to present, and we'll go through all three presentations, and then we'll have some time for questions. So over to you, Danica.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do this probably a little bit different to what other people are going to speak. There is a lot of information about how to write your citation and evidence, and there were some really good resources. But what I want to talk to you today is about why I did it and how I actually got through it. For me, it was quite difficult. So my background is I'm a PhD trained immunologist. I've done 5 years postdocing in the US, and I came back as this lovely, glorified, 40-40-20 academic, as some of you probably have started, and thrown into teaching. For me, and in science, and this is not to downgrade teaching at all, teaching is not seen as the forefront. You're an academic, but first and foremost, you're a researcher. So over the last 10 years, I have developed my teaching. I was never trained as an educator, but I went through and I did a grad cert. I've been a part of HERDSA and been a part of HERDSA TADL. I have a senior fellowship in HEA. What else? I also helped develop the Australian New Zealand Immunology Education SIG for part of our scientific program. So I can say I'm a self-taught academic, self-taught educator. So I never actually thought I was an educator. I had lots of things I was doing, lots of things I was doing wrong. The students told me, but that's all right. But I was just learning a lot. So I had all these seeds, and I thought through my collaborations, scientific collaborations, I have seen my collaborators as educators and also getting citations. So I thought I should probably try. It was more out of self-validation to show that I was an educator as well as a scientist. I had an idea. I had lots of things to draw on. I did have a lot of things that I've tried and failed and tried and worked. And so I developed this small little, EOI. And through QUT, we have a fantastic program for these awards where you have to submit an EOI. Then if you're chosen, you're developed with a group, and there's multiple processes and rounds. And I developed a small, application with a coach. It was Claire Hughes, and I cannot recommend someone like that enough, especially as a scientist. I do want you to understand that writing this sort of stuff isn't natural to me. And we worked really hard to put this authentic assessment together. And then it went to higher ups in Qualt, and basically they said it was great, but not to present what I was presenting. It was very positive, it was very scientific, but they picked on something that wasn't very scientific. So for me, I really struggled with that. And it's not lost on me that this award was for emotive, in an emotive context of reflection, which is something our students hated, which is why I did it. So I just wanted to point out that there is a point where you'll get feedback and it will not be good feedback. It was very positive, but for me, I just wanted them to know that they love the science, but they didn't. They love the emotive context. So I had to really reevaluate what I was doing. And that will bring it back to also that one idea from many ideas. I had about 5 key points in that first application, and then it's really brought it down to 1 point. But I wanted to point out this challenge. Being a scientist, I write very scientifically. There is very much structured. We do not write narratives. You do not want scientists writing narratives because it's just something that's not natural to us. And it's also the way we teach, and we're teaching scientists. So I found this really, really difficult. But the only way I got through it at first was my coach. But then I actually realized that I can write a narrative. I just have to think about my science in a different context. So whatever your area is, I would highly recommend you putting it out to someone else and then sort of being a lens back to you about what you're actually trying to say as a scientist, because most of the time when I spoke to Claire, she said, well, you're telling me this. And I thought, okay, I actually am telling you this. So building the narrative, if you're a scientist, is going to take probably 10 times longer than what it is if you're a natural writer. But I became very invested in the process. And I just want to quickly point out that at the same time as writing this application, I was also writing my promotion document. And learning to write a narrative actually helped me to write my promotion document. And it's something that scientists should all learn to do. I'll just grab the next slide, please. So I'm doing a really quick through, so I'm happy to answer questions. One of the things I struggled with was the structure. And because I don't like to break rules, I'm a scientist. They had first in the structures was impact, then recognition, and then innovation and scholarly practice. Now, to me, that didn't sit right. It wasn't set out like a paper that I would normally write. So it took me a few weeks to actually ask my coach, can I move things around? She said, yes. But so you need to tell scientists that they can move things around because we don't. So I rearranged it. So for me, when I was looking at it is, what is the problem as a scientist? You know, what is the methods? What are the results? And then your discussion. So I set this up in a way that was familiar to me. And I wanted to point out about the impact. I started writing very quantitative impact because that's what I'm used to. And the qualitative came later. And it actually came with the help of the coach. And I can't say enough that this is not just a one person writing a citation. This was a whole group of people helping me to articulate what I was trying to say and that impact. So a lot of the impact did come through that. And I will point out surveys. For me as a scientist, the surveys from the students, the formal ones, were the students talking about how great it was scientifically and how they can see they're using that in their future careers. Nothing about the emotive context, nothing about the learning. So scientific students don't talk about, well, that was really fun and I reflected on this and I feel like I'm growing as a person. They don't put that in formal surveys. But what I found in my feedback from the students, and I embedded it in their assessment, so they had to do a reflective practice, they actually showed me what they did and showed me how they have grown because of the things we're putting in place. So adding that into their assessment makes them do it, but it gives you the evidence. It's sort of, I guess, underhanded, maybe unethical, but we'll go with that. All right, last slide. I'll keep it really short. So start writing really, really early, especially if you're a scientist and we've got other things on. Even start with little ideas, throw them out to people, seek advice. So we have forced advice through Qualt colleagues. I was very lucky I had the ASI Education SIG, which I was able to throw some ideas around. And also the support. So again, very lucky with QT having a fantastic Claire Hughes, who was absolutely amazing. Freywright Bound was also someone who I could give something to, and she would come back and ask me questions and then made me realise what I was trying to say wasn't coming across like now. But their support is really, really important, and the support of Hertz Tattle groups and colleagues that I've met along the way. And the last one is the stepping stone. I think this is the most important. We can't all be winners. I was very fortunate enough to receive an award, but I think there's a part of me, there's amazing people out there, and I was very lucky. And while I was awarded, I'm very happy, but also the process is going to help you as an academic. It's going to help with your promotion. I haven't been publishing any of the work that I've been doing because I've never felt I was a real educator, and the way that I write was very different. But now I'm learning that I can write to scientists in an educational field, and I am an educator. I just have to put on the two hats a little bit, but it's really proven that you can be a hard scientist and still be an educator and supportive part of that for your own growth as an academic. So I've hopefully kept under 5 minutes. Sorry, I ramble.
No, you didn't ramble at all, Danica. It was really interesting to hear the challenges that most scientists would face. You know, writing a narrative is not something that we do as scientists. We write reports. And I remember as you were talking, you know, thinking back, geez, I found the same challenges when I was putting my application in over 25 years ago. Like it was and, you know, the beauty is that you had all the support there. You started writing early, and it did take me 3 attempts before I even, you know, put my submission into an award. So, but I worked very closely with the support crew I had at my institution at the time. So start writing early, really important, you know, seeking advice really early, getting that support that you need, and then, you know, using that as a stepping stone. So going through your, you know, school awards or faculty awards to university level awards, and then, you know, go for the national award. So it is a bit of a stepping stone to work through. So thank you for sharing that. That was fantastic. I'd now like to, if you can hold off on your questions, I'd now like to ask Stephen Kenway to join us, and he can talk us through their process that they went through and his key tips. He was a lead of a team that got a citation. So over to you, Stephen.
Well, firstly, thank you for the opportunity. Similar to Danica, I've sort of transitioned into teaching recently. I had a background in industry, then was fortunate to have 2 ARC fellowships after doing a PhD late in life. So I worked for a research centre, but both through those fellowships and then more recently, I was still teaching 1 day a week at master's level. And I did it because I enjoyed it, because I felt it value added to the research, because I was teaching my research and felt that had impact, and it was a great source of PhD students and master's students. I guess why, maybe going to the next slide, why we developed the Urban Design Challenge was to meet what we saw as 2 needs. We did not see cities evolving to the challenges, particularly challenges around climate change, and we didn't see good interplay between architects and engineers. I went to multiple design studios where an architect would present a sustainable building, a large building, and I'd ask questions about how much water or how much energy it generated, and I couldn't get any answers. And likewise, when I saw engineers leading urban developments, they had almost no understanding about people and the diversity of people and the diversity of those needs. So we felt there was a need for this interplay of, I guess, physical and social sciences, and all are present in our faculty here of AAUT, architecture, planning and engineering. So this presentation, I'd like to cover what is the Urban Design Challenge, because if one thing I learned from this application is being able to clearly describe what you've done and why that's special is so important. I'd like to talk a little bit about developing the nomination and the resources and mentorship and how that helped. Thank you. And that's our team, Urban Niche, proudly presenting, or our winning team from 2021, proudly presenting their design, which you see as a componentry of Lego and creative resources and 2D planning and a computer interaction that they all built in their 5-week program. Sorry, 5-day. It's a 5-day intensive. Thank you. Next slide. And they actually communicated with a poem. They nearly did it with interpretive dance, but I think they backed off that at the last minute. So what is involved in the Urban Design Challenge? And I guess perhaps different to Danica, I actually found the scholarship one hardest, perhaps because we started with impact. We applied both at UQ and then were nominated to apply for an Australian Financial Review. And the Australian Financial Review excellence in teaching and learning focuses on impact and uptake. And so we really had to develop that impact side more strongly. And perhaps because I'm a little bit more remote from teaching, I still only teach one course effectively, or one course, this one, and an intensive online. The scholarship of learning was newer to me. But in that process, we really came out, the two major innovations that created were sustained gamification and real-time multi-channel feedback. So maybe just to step you through, as a part of our application, we realized communicating what's involved in this 5-day intensive took more words than we could really fit in the sort of constrained or word constrained form. And so we had to shift to visual communication, and having architects involved in that is fantastic, because they're very visual people, and we had some great photos from the challenges that we've run. We really stepped up the challenge. We've been developing effectively for 12 years now, but it really came together in a 5-day intensive, which is what we put forward for the challenge. So we didn't really put it forward as individual classes or courses, but as the intensive. And in that 5 days, they have play-based, where they work on a wicked problem, but we try to find the right balance of fun but stress. And we think people learn and remember things that are fun, but also when it's a little bit stressful. But we'd also actively monitor that with periodic polls. And we really needed to actively scaffold the teamwork. So we did run a number of small social activities too. It's quite incredibly hard to use body language or to mime your discipline and to try to find a cluster up around disciplines that are the same. And then we deliberately split those groups. So we had teams that were multidisciplinary. And over the 5 days, in a very high data-rich environment, they had to come up with a combined vision. So bringing together those blue, orange, pink and green boxes where everyone's got a different vision of what success is. So for $1 billion development, urban development for where, say, 5,000 people could live. Then we progressively put them through rounds where they had to have a spatial plan and then ultimately build it, including design of the water and energy infrastructure. During the challenge, we had an advisory board with industry, academic and government practitioners that gave them real-time feedback. So I might go to the next slide. Thank you. I think many students, I believe, come for feedback. And when I hear complaints for students, it's often they don't get enough feedback. So we try to give them feedback through a fire hose on this. And we tell them up front, you will learn more from your colleagues in peer-to-peer learning than you will from us. And we see that actively. And within those teams of architects, engineers, planners, and scientists, we scaffold them to communicate fast, not just with words, but with body language and how they position around the table, etc. So the teams learn from each other. They also learn from other teams who actively say, because we see these designs iterate as the cities evolve, if you see a good idea or if the board has pointed out something you love, feel free to take it. So maybe it's the only course I'm aware of where you're allowed to actively take results from others. But the nice thing about that is we see ideas evolve really rapidly. I mentioned the industry board, so industry partners, academics, and government all contribute to a Google spreadsheet that we contribute to in real time, and all teams can see that. So they can see the presentation and the comments in real time. And then we use tools, we actively teach and have developed through our research tools which quantify the design outcomes, so they get feedback on the water balance, the energy balance, and the urban heat. So really, really opening that pipeline of feedback. Thank you. My last slide. So developing the nomination, I mentioned we had to work iteratively, and the feedback from Italy, our Institute for Teaching and Learning, was phenomenally helpful. Thanks, Michelle, and your team. Really helped us tailor it both to UQ in the first instance, then to the Australian Financial Review, where we fortunately received a first finalist award, which helped with the recognition. So that sort of helped feed into the AAUT. And then finally the scholarship of learning, where we had some critical friends and mentors which really threw literature at us and helped us almost understand what an innovation was, because we knew it worked. We had a voluntary course run in the holidays where 40 students participated for a whole week, and they all stayed right to the end at the last day. So we knew the students liked it. We could see their engagement. Maybe we just didn't know exactly what was different. But we did find communicating what that challenge was very hard, as I've articulated. We did have a survey of the students before and after, I guess, the recognition at UQ and with the AFR. We had 5 letters from universities that are now using the resources in the US, Canada, and Europe, which also helped. And I think in the survey, having open-ended feedback, letting the students express themselves in words, and then following up with those students with emails to say, why did you say this was life-changing? Has it changed your life? And getting additional feedback from them on that. And also interviewing our industry partners who have supported it along the way. And I guess that review really helped us lift from our discipline-based framing. We framed it in water engineering or planning or architecture to bring out, non-discipline specifics. And I just wanted to flag, I think for this that teamwork was essential. It really required a multidisciplinary team. I think it's really hard to teach multidisciplinary work unless you have a functioning multidisciplinary team. We almost had to role play that as we evolved and developed the challenge during the intensive as we responded to need for more resources or a shift in what we were doing. And so with my last slide, I'd like to acknowledge the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. Really interesting to hear about the Urban Design Challenge.
Hey everyone, my name is Charanya Ramakrishnan. I am a senior lecturer from the School of Computing, Macquarie University, and I won the 2023 citation for using active learning approaches that are quite unconventional in IT education and how it redefines student engagement. If you were to ask me about my experience writing the nomination, in one word, it would be intense, in a good way, of course. And it has been one of the most positive, reflective experiences I've had. And I feel super empowered by the end of the journey. So when I started writing the application itself, what I did was I took the assessment criteria and I started making statements underneath each of those. And what I noticed was I was talking a lot about the what and the how, but I was missing the why. And that's something then I used to, redefine my statements better. I did have a good collection of evidence already from the different types of stakeholders that you might have. So for me, the industry people also provided evidence, which helps me weave a good story. As when you talk about evidence, you have to remember the width of evidence and the depth of evidence. So you have to collect it over the years, both qualitative and quantitative. So all that came in handy for me to weave the story and put it under each of the headings. I did watch all of the YouTube videos that AAUT provides and read through every single citation and exemplars that they provide as well, the nomination pack. So it was a complete list of everything that I had to do. And that helped me so very much to come up with the application that I actually was proud of at the very end. I got it reviewed by multiple people from different disciplines as well. And usually I would get a comment on something wasn't clear. You have to clarify this. And especially if it was in their area, it helps me understand why I should make it more clearer for people who might not understand the terminologies. And so I finished the application a few days earlier. I read through it every single day, and I would always find some area of improvement throughout. The challenges I had, the first one was the application's length. 4 pages isn't enough to say how amazing we all are. So it was one of the most difficult things because the references itself came to about a page for me.
Challenge. Now, because of
it was really difficult to put everything in 4 pages. And the way I worked through it, I picked the most important thing and then I focused on just that one rather than trying to paint, all the different aspects of what I do. Where to place evidence, you have to look at the headings and what, an evidence could fit into 2 headings really well, but you have to pick where it would fit in better. And that was something that was challenging for me, but over the revisions, you would find that it gets easier. And then filtering out the best of the best. Again, there might be 20 things, but you have to pick the best things that apply to you and backs your story up. So the tips and advice for the future nominees, definitely try and answer the big why. That's something that we tend to miss quite a bit. Map out the different sections, because you have to really look at where to put each of your statements under. You might be doing 10 amazing things, but you have to pick the thing that defines you as an educator. Use a range of evidence that helps you paint the story better, and review. Get it reviewed by multiple people. But at the very end, it's your story. So if you talk from your heart, and you think the story is well written, that's what matters at the very end. I wish you the very best, and I hope you found this useful. Thank you.
I do want to leave some time for any questions while we've got Danica and Stephen online. So is there any questions for Stephen and Danica? Lots of thank yous for very insightful presentations. That's great to hear. Really interesting to hear about the Urban Design Challenge, Stephen, and the process that you went through, and it was something sort of very, very different and very unusual to the normal courses that we run. So lots of thank yous. We might just move on, just because we've got a couple of minutes left. Just to let you know of upcoming PD sessions. So on the 3rd of June, so we've got a bit of a break. We'll be looking at writing a successful early career nomination. Luana, who is presenting for that one? Can you let me know?
That is a good question.
Christian Moros is presenting that one. He's a team lead assessor for the early career category, and he was an early career recipient a few years ago. We've also got 2 early career recipients from the last couple of years presenting as well.
Fantastic. And then following that, we've got the Neville Bonner Award nomination, and then writing successful program award nomination. So, and we've got key leads of the chairs for those panels as well. So that's coming up. If we go to the next slide, just to remind you of the nomination process and the key dates. So May to July, everyone's starting to prepare their nominations. Many people are attending these sessions, getting as much information as they can. The ICOs will then submit the nominations between August and September. We will be using a different system, so we won't be using Spark Plus. A different system is being implemented. In October, we start the 3-stage assessment process, then we'll start to put together our assessment teams, our panels, and then the panels will make recommendations to the committee. The committee will then make changes and forward their recommendations over to the Universities Australia Board, who then either accept or reject those suggestions, and then they will be announced in February 2025. So that's sort of the process. Next slide, Danny. Just to reiterate where all the resources are. So more information, we've got the AAUT Universities Australia webpage, we've got the mentoring scheme, we've got the awards team you can reach out on. I'm generally posting some updates on LinkedIn mainly, and then Universities Australia and their own website have got details that we can address. Just checking if there's a few questions coming in. Is there anything on the chat, Lou, that you want to let us know about?
Yes, we just got a question about if you can move around the criteria when you're addressing it. You can. We recommend, if you do move it around though, if you address it in a different order, that you explicitly highlight which criteria you're addressing, just so it's very clear to assessors and it's easy for them to review your work.
Yeah. So in a citation, you're really addressing one of the 4 criteria. So you have to choose whether you're going to talk about approaches to teaching and support of student learning, or the development of curricula, or you choose a subcategory, you choose one of the 4 subcategories, and then you address all the assessment criteria. Yes, so you choose one subcategory and then address all 4 assessment criteria. The order in which you address the assessment criteria is not that important, the order in which it is, but we need to make sure that you do address all of it. It needs to be very clear to the assessors that you have addressed all of it. I'm going to give it back to Liz if she's got any final comments at this stage. Liz?
Just a final thought, folks. The assessors, your assessors and the panel want you to succeed. Give them good reasons for awarding your citation to you and make sure that your case is clear. I know that this panel is full of really outstanding, this session is full of really outstanding teachers and supporters of education, and I am looking forward to seeing your applications as they come through.
I hope those of you that joined the session have gained some valuable insights into applying for a citation. The recordings will be made available, and we'll also send the presentation, the video presentation that Miss Charanya Ramakrishnan has produced, and we'll share that to all the participants. I would like to thank again Liz as the chair of the Citations Committee. I'd also like to invite the two past citation recipients, Danica Hickey and Stephen Kenway. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights, really valuable insights that I'm hoping everyone has gained a lot out of this session. Good luck, everyone, and we look forward to seeing some fantastic citation submissions this year.